Hello world, Shelly here, and today I've got for you a look at the Kat Von D Saint and Sinner eyeshadow palette. I've been playing around with it for about a month now, and I thought I would share my thoughts and how I got this eye look. If you would like to see more eye looks out of this palette, let me know down in the comments below, because I feel like this is really a creative, versatile palette, and I would love to do some more looks for it if you guys would be interested in seeing that. So let's take a look at what this palette is all about. It retails for $62 on Sephora's website. It's got 178 reviews and just about 5 stars total out of 5. So it's getting awesome reviews over on Sephora. You get 24 shades in this palette of 0.04 ounces a piece, and this was inspired by Gothic cathedral stained glass windows, according to Kat Von D. And when you open the palette, you have mirrors on both sides. I'm just going to fold them back so that they don't get in the way here. But you've got 2 sides, and so that we can see all of it, I have to keep it back here because it's a pretty big palette. So I would say, you know, maybe it's a little too big to travel with. I traveled with it. It's the only palette I took with me on a recent conference I went to. And as you see, there are some beautiful, beautiful colors in this palette. Let me read to you some of the description information here. It's an ultra limited edition eyeshadow palette. It is still in stock at Sephora, but get it soon if you want it, because once it's gone, it's gone. And it's got 12 Saint and 12 Sinner shades inspired by vibrant stained glass windows of Gothic cathedrals. The Saint and Sinner eyeshadow palette has 24 pigment-packed shades inspired by the kaleidoscope stained glass windows of old world Gothic cathedrals. That's also the inspiration for the layout. So for those of you that have thought to yourselves that this isn't a very cohesive layout of colors, the palette design is intended to look like the stained glass window. So yes, that might make it a little bit more challenging to work with in terms of color selections. It was meant to be that way. Experience divine dimension with 3 fearless finishes: electrifying metallics, velvety mattes, and shimmery pearls, plus 2 new special effect glimmer shades. Rightfully placed at the peak of the palette, these transformative super glimmer shades amp up any eye look with a prismatic micro pearls that catch the light with every movement. This is a very typical Kat Von D formula. If you have any of her other palettes, this is very similar to them. It's exactly the same formula, which I love the consistency from one palette to another. When I fall in love with a brand's eyeshadow formula, I want that formula in all of their palettes, which is what really disappointed me about the Anastasia Beverly Hills Subculture palette, because I absolutely love the Modern Renaissance palette and I love ABH single eyeshadows, and Subculture seems nothing like that. But this is just like Kat Von D's formula. So if you like or love Kat Von D's formula, this is just like it. As you know, Kat Von D, 100% cruelty-free. This is a vegan palette, completely vegan. It's also paraben-free. And the Saint and Sinner eyeshadow palette features original lettering and scroll work hand-drawn by Kat Von D. Now let's take a look at swatches of these shades. These are going to be brush swatches on my arm with primer. Alright, for these swatches, my arm has been coated with the Too Faced Shadow Insurance Primer. And I set that very lightly with the Kat Von D translucent setting powder. And as I always do with my eyeshadows, I'm going to be using the MAC 233 brush, and I'll be using the synthetic side. And in between shades, I will use this little color switcher, spongeroo thingamajig, and all of these will be swatched dry. First up is the topper shade Absolution, which is meant to be an eyeshadow topper. It's sort of just a sort of clear glitter overlay. Next is the other topper shade. This is the color Rapture. Next row we've got Worship. Next is Immaculate. Next is Sabbath. Next is Ashes, and one of the cool things about this color, you think the micro glitter is going to disappear on the eye, but it really does stick in the shadow really nicely. Next up is Chalice. These two look really pretty with each other. Next is Sacred Heart. This is Amen. Way more pigment than expected for a bone-colored shadow. Next up is the shade Martyr. This is a beautiful transition shade. Next is Devil. Oh, I just feel like fall leaves with this one. Next is Revelation. Next we have Sanctuary. If I'm not mistaken, I think Kat said, Kat, like we're best friends, I think she said that this shade matches the lipstick. Next is Heaven. And this is just the coolest color. It's got like a purple shift to it. I didn't pick up quite enough. Let me get a little bit more because I want you guys to see the shift on this color. It is just, it's not just silver. It's this lilac sort of shift, and it's just gorgeous. Next up is Crucifix. Next up is one of my favorite colors in this palette, Vestment, which is like a dragon scale green-brown shift. Let me get some more. You see that green that shifts to brown? It's just so crazy pretty. Next up, a pretty electric blue called Ministry. And that is exactly what you think it is. It's like, bam! Last one in this row is called Exodus, and I cannot wait to play with this one. Oh, look at that pigment, you guys. Oh, it's so pretty. Starting out on the bottom row, these colors like have my heart. This is Cathedral. Look at that. I love this sort of lavender lilac loveliness. Next up is Rosary. So pretty. Next is Baptism. Again, impressive pigment for a very light shade. Next is the bright purple Exorcism. It's got like a purple navy to it, so it's not quite straight purple. It's a really interesting color. Next is Relic, which looks to me a lot like that new Rihanna highlighter shade in the Fenty Beauty line. Look at that gold. And lastly, we have Stigmata. Oh, the fall leaves are screaming at me again. It's so pretty. Now, first up, I want to point out before we take a look at an eye look with this palette, you really can, even though it looks kind of random the way they have organized it, you really can go with these sort of trios of colors. And if you just use each block of 3, you will get a cohesive eye look. If you want something a little more bold, you could use them top to bottom, and you'll get cohesive looks out of this palette. I know it looks random, but it's really not as random as you think. So if you just start out playing around with it that way, which is how I started out, I started by using the trios, I came up with really beautiful looks and was very happy with it right out of the gate. So don't be overwhelmed by the fact that the colors do look a bit random in the way that they're organized, because just start with it that way and you'll find yourself inspired more quickly than you think. One of the things Kat Von D said in her own swatch video, which is really good, you should totally watch it. She says a lot about the inspiration for the palette, was that she found that this palette helped her to break out of the mold of what she would typically sit down and do for an eye look. I really appreciate that you can sort of get beyond your everyday. You probably already have everyday looks, and you know, this is one of those slightly outside the box kinds of palettes, and I appreciate the inspiration and the little nudge to get myself to do things that I might not normally do. I do think that the way this palette works, it is, you can get full looks out of the palette on its own, but you're going to be even more happy with it if you combine it with other palettes. Now, I'm enjoying mixing this with the Pastel Goth palette from Kat Von D. I think if you've got the Shade and Light Contour palette, that'll give you some nice matte basics to use as the sort of foundation for different looks with this palette. But really, you don't have to have all Kat Von D palettes. If you've got any, you know, matte transition shades, they will help you out to get more creative with this palette. But again, you can make many looks just with this palette alone. All right, to start out, I have already primed my lids with the MAC paint pot in Painterly, which does not want to focus. There it goes. And first up, I'm just going to set my primer with this cream shade called Amen. I'm just using a flat shadow brush. This brush is from Wet n Wild. It is my, oh my goodness, this is more pigmented than I expected. This is my favorite primer setting brush. Whoa. Next, I'm going to go in with this brownish shade Martyr, that sort of baby pukey brown shade, and I'm going to use a large fluffy blending brush, a tapered crease brush. This is the 03 from Wayne Goss, and I'm going to use this in the crease as my transition color. So in the crease and slightly above the crease if you've got hooded lids, just to give a nice transition from the sort of crease where you'll have a darker shade up to the brow bone where you'll have essentially nothing. You want a nice soft blown out look here. This Wayne Goss 03 is my absolute all-time. If I could only buy one Wayne Goss brush in my life, it would be this one. Next, I'm going to go into this dark brown matte Crucifix, and you want a slightly smaller tapered blending brush. I'm going to use the Wayne Goss number 17. I also like the Sigma E25 for this. And we're going to start in the sort of outer third, outer V, and pull this into the crease. Don't go quite as high as you went with the first shade. This way you can deepen the crease and create a gradual transition into that transition shade. That's why I like to go for different sized brushes. The big brush, if you want your color sort of splayed out everywhere, your big brush will do that. When you go to the next smaller brush, it won't, just because it's a smaller brush, it won't have as much reach as that initial brush, and it just sort of helps you get that sort of gradient transition. Next, I'm going to go into this amazing green, immaculate. This one has been speaking to me ever since I got this palette. I'm going to use a flat shadow brush. This is a MAC 233 brush, but any flat shadow brush will do. And I'm just going to use it dry because I found that these shadows work just fine without any setting spray. I'm going to apply that all over my lid. I'm going to take it only up to where we stopped with Crucifix. Now I'm going to go in with a Makeup Geek Outer V brush into that same brown, that Crucifix, and just darken up that outer corner a bit. If you do get any fallout from Crucifix, be careful, because if you try to brush it away, you can pretty easily end up brushing a line of dark eyeshadow onto your face, as I've now done twice. This has a little bit of fallout on it, and I'm a little nervous about that. I'm going to go back in with an even smaller crease blending brush. This is the Wayne Goss 20, and just a teeny bit of that first color Martyr in above the green to make sure we have a nice smooth gradient. For the lower lash line, I'm going to go back in with Crucifix and a tiny little brush. This is a Wayne Goss 08. I'm going to keep this as close to my lash line as humanly possible. I'm going to blend that out with marker and a little pencil-sized blending brush. For inner corner highlight, I'm going to use this shade Absolution, which is one of the topper shades. It's a white frost. It pulls a little bit pink, but if you go a little light on it, you shouldn't have too much trouble with the pink in this color scheme. Just going to pop that on my pinky, and boop! Next to these colors, it pulls nicely sort of gold. I'm going to dip a teeny bit of Amen with that Absolution and use that as my brow bone highlight. Just a little shimmer up there, teeny bit. I'm going to tight line with the Urban Decay 24/7 Waterline Pencil in Legend. For liner, I've got the Kat Von D Tattoo Liner in Trooper. For mascara, I'm going Urban Decay Perversion. And for lip, I'm going to go Kat Von D Lolita. And here is the finished look. There you have it, my take on the Kat Von D Saint and Sinner palette. If you would like to see more looks out of this palette, let me know down below in the comments. Give me a thumbs up, and I will make sure to make more because I feel like this palette has so much potential for so many beautiful things, especially if you combine it with like the Pastel Goth palette or the Shade and Light Contour palette. It is just a beautiful, beautiful palette. Let me know if you want to see more looks. I would be glad to do them. Thanks a lot for taking some time out of your day to geek out over makeup with me. I appreciate it, and I hope you guys all have an awesome day or night wherever you are in the world. Take care of each other. Bye-bye.